and welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. I'm Justin Fried. That's Mike Luciano.
What are you smiling about?
I'm not. That sucked, man. That sucked. That was awful. We're here talking about the Jets' Week 4 loss to the Denver Broncos. I don't know, man. I'm really sad. It was a very unfortunate loss. This felt like a classic trap game going into it. The rain sucked. They were bullied and embarrassed on both ends. I don't know, man. That's my immediate takeaway. What do you got to say about it?
Well, the worst part is I don't even necessarily want to do this whole hour show because we could theoretically just replay a show from last year because it's the exact same stuff. It was the defense. I know it had some problems late, but 10 points is – you can't ask for much more than 10 points from a team. 10 points allowed. Bo Nix had probably the worst half I think I've ever seen an NFL quarterback play. I'm not even trying to make a joke of that. I really think that.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 completions, -7 yards. I don't think he had one impressive throw all game. Maybe I think one to Sutton in the middle, but that was it. 10 points allowed, and nothing went right offensively.
Nope.
Nothing went right. Not Rodgers, not Hall, not the offensive line, not the playmakers, not anything. The only real question is who's going to get what percentage of the blame pie, and I still don't know how to divvy it up. So, you could use the chat to make your feelings heard. You can find us on YouTube at the Jet Press. You could like the stream there, subscribe. That's where you help support the show. And if you go to Apple, Google, Spotify, all the podcast platforms, we are there. But, I mean, I guess we got to dive into this.
Let's do it.
Mr. AC Milan 1111. Jets peaked in 69.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
We thought this would be a peak, and instead we're losing at home to the Broncos.
Yep.
And right now, I'm only really more upset than I normally would be because the Jets look like a team that's going to start out 2-5 this year. Because their next 3 games are Minnesota, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh, all of which are in prime time. Give me one good reason they're going to win any of those games after watching this.
Yeah, man.
Give me one reason they're not going to be a 2-5 team.
Because football's weird. That's
other than just entropy of the universe. There's no reason. There's no logical thing you could tell me that will say this team's going to be 2-5 because A, B, and C. Because this was supposed to be the layup game. Yep. Zach Wilson beat him last year. I know it's a different team, but give me a break here. Bo Nix is the quarterback. 9 points offensively. Nothing went right. Let's just start piece by piece.
Go for it.
Let's start with Rodgers. Rodgers, and I know that here's my problem because all the Jets fans that are going to say the offensive line was terrible, the play calling, the receivers and all that, I get all that because that's true. It's 100% true. Didn't we acquire Aaron Rodgers to not have these debates every single game of if it's the O-line or the play call? Isn't that why they got Aaron Rodgers, who even at his worst can overcome things like that? I know that he may not be 100% responsible, but I'm sorry. You got to score more than 9 points against Denver. You got to score a touchdown against the Bo Nix-led team at home. I got to get that out of you, Rodgers. Especially last week, New England we thought had a pretty good defense, so we know he can play against good defenses. And then just completely laid an egg. I mean, he was 2 of 8 for 16 yards well into the second quarter.
Yeah.
Completely laid an egg. And I know he made some impressive throws. I thought actually – if you want to give any positives at all, I thought Mike Williams had his best game. He looks really good.
He's good.
Making multiple jump ball catches. He looks pretty fantastic. I don't know why they don't use him more, but this is a disappointing game for Rodgers. Really, the only, I think, argument me and Justin are going to have is how much blame goes on Rodgers, but I don't think you can absolve him totally of it because you got Aaron Rodgers to overcome some of these issues, and he couldn't today.
Correct. I don't think Rodgers is completely absolved of any blame. I don't think he had a particularly good game. The Jets lost this game for one reason, and it's they got dominated in the trenches. I mean, obviously you can break it down into further things, but if you get dominated in the trenches the way that the Jets did in this game on both offense and defense, you're not going to win games. The offensive line was whooped. They got absolutely whooped by a Broncos defensive line that on paper shouldn't be as good as they are, but has been pretty good this year. I thought Vance Joseph coached circles around Nathaniel Hackett in this game, and the offensive line really struggled. It looked like Ola Fashanu struggled in his first game. Tyron Smith had another rough one. The entire offensive line was bad. Aaron Rodgers was sacked 5 times, pressured a lot more than that. He was getting beat up, and we saw him limping at the end of the game because he was getting hit all game. And while, Rodgers I don't think was particularly good, his offensive line really, really laid him out to dry. Breece Hall, as somebody mentioned in chat, had a really, really bad game. This was his worst game in the NFL too. But even looking at the defensive side, defensive line got whooped too. And I know the score line might not suggest that. They gave up 10 points or whatever. The first half was good because the weather was really, really dictating how both offenses moved the ball. But once the weather kind of calmed down and the rain stopped in the second half, that defensive line got whooped. And by whooped, I mean that they allowed, 77 rushing yards to Javonte Williams on 4.8 yards per carry. Jaleel McLaughlin, 68 rushing yards on 5.1 yards per carry. Both of those running backs came into today averaging 2.2 yards per carry. Williams had 52 rushing yards entering the game. In 3 games, he had 77 in just this one game. McLaughlin had 40 in 3 games entering today. He had 46 today. Both running backs outpaced their season total in just one game today. This is a really, 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 honestly, bottom 3 rushing offense in the NFL. Offensive line, not good on paper. Jets D-line got absolutely whooped. They barely got any pressure on Bo Nix. I know I saw a stat that said Will McDonald had 5 pressures. Where? Pressures? Where? Somebody point those to me because I saw maybe 1 or 2. The pass rush was stymied, especially in the second half. I thought the D-line got absolutely dominated, and it's really hard to win football games when you do that. And again, combine that with how bad the offensive line was dominated. You're not going to win games doing that. They almost got lucky because Denver is a really bad football team. Bo Nix played a bad game for the most part. I don't think that Denver was particularly well coached on the offensive side of the ball in this game. They almost blew it. And then the Jets, obviously, of course. I mean, it's a completely different narrative if Greg Zuerlein hits that 50-yard field goal, where the narrative is that, boy, they look bad, but they snuck away with a win. But ultimately, either way, the Jets look bad. Both sides of the ball got dominated in the trenches, and that is my takeaway for why they lost. Jay, you could blame Rodgers. You could blame Breece Hall. If the O-line and D-line are playing as bad as they did in this game, you're not winning a lot of football games this year.
And I guess if you're some sort of biblical messiah with the patience of a saint, you could say, well, if you somehow want to take the positive angle, you could say, well, this was assuredly the worst they're going to play all year.
Yeah.
It can't get worse from that, and they still almost won. I guess if you want to do that, I'm not going to drink that Kool-Aid, but I guess you could say that if you're looking for something to justify it. Looking at the O-line, and I'm not red hot about it. They were obviously bad, but last year I was red hot because even though, with the players they were pulling in literally off the street, they were, you knew that was going in, they were terrible. And then every week they were terrible and it would piss you off. The first 3 games, I mean, the O-line, not only was it much better than last year, I mean, it was one of the best in the league. It was second best in pass blocking. It was pretty much middle of the road in run blocking. We didn't go into this game saying oh my God, the offensive line is going to get just bullied like this. Tyron Smith looked every bit his age. This was not a Tyron Smith game. I know we want to give Fashanu a break because he's playing on right tackle. I thought he had some pretty good mauling snaps, but he gave up a lot of pressures.
And the penalties, the false starts.
Penalty. Now again, some of them were ticky. The Lazard finger guns thing, that was ticky.
I don't include that. I'm talking all the false starts,
starts and holdings, and
it stalls drives and it kills them. And that was part of the reason why the offensive line was as devastatingly bad as they were, because you couldn't function. The offense could not function with the O-line playing as bad as they did. Obviously, there's other stuff to it. Not to cut you off there, but I mean, people are also saying blame the playmakers here. I mean, as TC Jersey said, Breece Hall looked lost. He absolutely lost. Another comment here said, can we keep the playmakers accountable? Yes, we can. I thought Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson were bad in this game. Garrett Wilson obviously being shadowed by Pat Surtain. That's a really, really difficult assignment for him. But even so far through 4 weeks, they've been underwhelming. Those are your 2 best playmakers. Right now, Braylon Allen has outperformed Breece Hall through 4 weeks. I'm not down on Breece Hall. I'm not saying that he's bad, but we went into the year, Mike, you and I, saying that he was the second best running back in the NFL. He had a very strong case for that.
Well, you did.
Okay, well, you said top 3 or 4. I think you were right there with me.
I was not that far off. I think I said top 5, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, the only people I think was even in the conversation was a Bijan Robinson, maybe a Derrick Henry if you were still that high on him going into the year, and he's been really good. I think that was the consensus. But he's a top 5 running back going into the year. We have not seen that Breece Hall, and today was his worst game that he's played. I'm sure he'll be the first person to tell you that. It wasn't even just the lack of explosiveness is very concerning. He was really just having a tough time running in these conditions, and even in the second half. But he had drops, he had 2 false starts, the mental errors. I mean, it was just an all-around bad game from Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson couldn't do anything either. So if your 2 best playmakers, you're the focal points of this offense, aren't doing anything and aren't living up to their potential and how good they can be, that's tough, man. You're relying on Allen Lazard. You're relying on Mike Williams, who, while he was great, it's tough. So, absolutely. Hold the playmakers accountable. Hold the offensive line accountable. hold the coaches accountable because I don't think Nathaniel Hackett called a very good game at all, especially the misuse of Braylon Allen early in the first half. They eventually leaned on him more in the second half, but it was bad. I mean, the entire offense. And then, of course, Rodgers as well. He shares some of the blame. He missed some throws and looked his age at points. I think the escapability was still there with him, but he looked his age in this game. And part of that was the offensive line, but he absolutely deserves blame as well.
Like looking at the defense too, I know that the pressures are going to be kind of weird. I do want to see how it said Will McDonald got 6 because the truth is probably somewhere in the middle where I don't think he got 1 like where you were counting or 6 like Next Gen Stats was counting. I think he probably is somewhere in the middle.
It's fine, but he's the only guy. He's the only guy they got.
Yeah, he's the only one. They didn't get to Bo Nix. Now, part of it too was because they did not trust Bo Nix to do anything, so. Right. It was get the ball immediately out. So half of the plays, there wasn't even, I don't care how good a jump you're getting, you're not getting to him because they just had him dump the ball off behind the line of scrimmage. Justin, he didn't complete a ball beyond the line of scrimmage until the third quarter.
But they started throwing it downfield a little bit more in the second half. And the Jets were also doing a similar quick game strategy, and Rodgers was still getting hit. Like the difference between those 2 offensive line performances and the 2 defensive line performances was staggering.
It's just, I know that it maybe – excuse me, I'm getting choked up here.
Yeah, it's really bad, dude.
I think
it's killing you.
I think the defense obviously probably didn't play as well as 10 points would suggest that they did. Correct. But 10 points is 10 points, and a historically bad first half for Bo Nix, conditions and all, is a historically bad first half for Bo Nix. You can't put this on the defense necessarily. Now, if you look at the offense. And I'm going to say this every single game of the year until I'm blue in the face, because we know that this is not Nathaniel Hackett totally coordinating Zach Wilson's offense. We know this is to be very, to have the benefit of the doubt, rather collaborative as opposed to just Rodgers doing everything.
Sure.
So again, I don't know where the blame lies. Rodgers, Hackett, we still don't know what the power structure is here, but let's just assume for a little bit that Hackett, this was mostly Hackett's doing, for the sake of argument.
Sure, because it was bad.
Shame on him, fireable performance. Last year was fireable, but we hadn't seen a fireable performance from him until this. This was JV college. This was not a professional game plan. They weren't vertical until they had to be. They weren't in rhythm until they had to be. They didn't go away from Breece Hall playing bad until they had to, or until Rodgers probably said, hey, freaking get Braylon Allen some touches. But again, for this, like if we put it on Rodgers, yeah, you had to score a touchdown against Bo Nix, and you didn't. And there's a lot of factors for that. Rookie tackle playing out of position, offensive line with their worst game of the year, but you got to score against Bo. The Jets acquired Aaron Rodgers to win games like this, where nothing's going right, and then Aaron Rodgers, by hook or by crook, finds a way. Greg Zuerlein, by the way, you're dead to me. I don't care if you're on the team tomorrow or not. I mean, get out of here.
He's been real shaky.
Yeah, I don't want to see him anymore. Hope his key card doesn't work in the morning. He's made enough money where I'm not taking money out of his family or his kids' mouths. He's had a long career. So I feel comfortable in saying, get out of here. Let's try new kickers out. Unless it's Corey Vedvik, I'll take anybody at this point.
It feels very Jets, too, and I hate to be the whole, same old Jets. By the way, I think I prematurely declared same old Jets dead after last week. But moving on, it would be very Jets-like for Austin Seibert to now be one of the best kickers in the NFL after they let him go. And as soon as they let him go, Greg Zuerlein falls off a cliff. That would be very Jets-like.
The only thing saving that is Bryce Huff, who had his first solo tackle today. Yay!
Good for him.
That's the only thing.
A few comments. I want to echo this because I completely agree with Beast Alvarado.
I want to go deep back up. We got a big backlog of comments. We're going way back up.
We have a lot. We're going to get to. We appreciate everybody commenting. We're going to get to as much as we can. I want to harp on this because I agree. Like, as much as I don't think Hackett was good, I don't think you could blame him. I don't know if this specifically is a fireable offense. Like, he's had worse game plans. I think the entire offense just snowballed and was awful together. With the offensive line is playing as bad as they did, and when you cannot run the ball, it's really hard to call plays. Like, and again, that's not me absolving blame from Nathaniel Hackett, who I do not think did a very good job, and especially in the first half was really confusing with his personnel usage. But I don't think this is one of his worst games, that's not saying a lot because he's had some really bad games. Got a lot going up here. I'm just.
Let's go with Ryan. Let's go with Ryan Pasta.
I pulled up this one. I'm sorry.
Oh, we lost it. No.
I got it. This is Spencer Green on YouTube. And I'm just gonna assume this person lives in Utah. They said Zach Wilson would have scored more than 9 points today. No, he wouldn't have. Next.
No, he wouldn't have.
No, he wouldn't have. Next.
He wouldn't have scored many, if any.
And we're just going to shoot down a couple of ridiculous theories here. Look for Saul to be fired after the London game. They're not going to fire Saul after 5 games. They're not doing that. JD's under extreme pressure himself, and a loss to Darnold would make his hot seat fire. It'd be bad. I mean, they'd be 2-3. It wouldn't be good, but they're not firing Robert Saul if they're 2-3.
They might fire him, but not after 5
If they
games.
lose 6 in a row, 7 in a row, then yeah, maybe Saul is fired, but they're not firing him mid-season unless it's a calamity. But they might very well fire him at the end of the season if they don't make the playoffs. Mid-season, it would take a disaster for him to get fired.
Let's go back to the top and get down because we got a very active chat. We want to get to as many of you guys as possible. Ryan Pasta, that's a fantastic name. Nice. Football isn't weird. The Jets offense is bad at football, bad play calling, bad quarterback. Well, today, yes.
Today,
no creativity. They're just bad.
We say that, but also they just were awesome on Thursday. Like against a not terrible Patriots defense. Like football is weird because we just saw the Jets offense look great, and then the next week they look horrific. Like that is weird. Weird shit happens in football. And that's not saying that like, oh, but we should just ignore this and say like, oh yeah, right, chalk it up as just a bad game. Because no, there are deep concerns coming out of this game. But to just say that the Jets offense is and forever will be bad and has been bad all year is a lie. They were really good the week before. Today
they weren't. Delonte. Hackett needs to be fired now. Salah ASAP. The roster is quite brilliant on paper, yet here we are. This is confusing because, again, the offensive line was so good early on, and then they just all didn't play well, and you can't explain that. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. And that's
against the Broncos' defensive line is good, but it should not have done that to them by any stretch.
I think the offensive line will bounce back. I think the pass protection will be better. I think you'll be able to get Garrett Wilson more involved. Breece Hall, we know he didn't just forget how to play football. He's good, which is why, again, one of my biggest concerns coming out of this game, and I know the defense only allowed 10 points, but Mike, the D-line sucks. It's bad, and I don't see any way of them fixing it unless they make an external addition because I don't expect Hassan Reddick to be here. It's just bad. And I know they just went off against the Patriots last week. The Patriots were playing like practice squad guys. Like that.
There was a Jets line from last year.
That offensive line was unplayable. Like it was completely unplayable. They just went against the Broncos offensive line. That's not particularly good, and they got dominated. Will McDonald can't be your best pass rusher. I'm sorry. He just can't be. Quentin Williams it can't do everything. Like the rest of Michael Clemens is a 0 out there. Eric Watts is a 0 out there. Tack McKinley is a 0 out there. It's just really bad. They have a bunch of defensive linemen that are honestly would not be in the rotation in a lot of teams. And it's crazy to say that about the Jets defensive line right now, but they're trying to change it. They played Bruce Hector today. They played Eric Watts today because Braden McGregor had been bad. And, Leonard Taylor, I think, was not great in run defense, even if he had a half sack in that last game. But they're trying things. They're trying. It's just, I have seen no solution to it. If this, one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL, just ran all over them in the second half in a game where the Jets fucking knew that the quarterback couldn't throw the ball. They knew Bo Nix couldn't do shit. Bo Nix had -7 passing yards in the first half, and the Jets still couldn't stop the run in the second half. They got run all over. When are they going to be able to stop the run?
And on top of that, like you said earlier, that a lot of these guys won't play. The only guys on this defensive line that I think would be in a regular rotation among pretty much anybody else would be Quinnen, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Will McDonald. Like, he can't be your best guy, but he can play. And then Kinlaw.
Yes, I agree with that. And maybe Solomon Thomas sometimes. I think he's
and that's it. But 3 definites.
Correct.
Out of a team that plays 10, 3 definites.
And that's a massive, massive, massive problem. And again, we're screaming it all off season that the defensive line got a lot worse. And then unfortunately, Hassan Reddick isn't here. And then you lost your best defensive end because Jermaine Johnson is out for the year. Like it was a combination of off-season missteps, mishandling of Hassan Reddick, and Hassan Reddick kind of just going rogue. And then unfortunate luck with Jermaine Johnson. But here we are. And I think the defensive line, I see no solution. And it's only going to get worse when you play better running teams. Like Minnesota next week's going to run all over them. Aaron Jones going for 120 yards.
And then they get Buffalo after that. I mean, that's his
right.
Beast Alvarado. It's so easy to cry about the damn coaches, but OMG, our players, he means, are not running the right route, dropping passes, and not blocking for their own wide receiver. That just speaks to complete meltdown.
And it also speaks to coaching. Like if you're frequently having and again, I hate being the person that's like, oh, the penalties are on the coach, because I don't think that's always true. But if the offense is repeatedly having false start issues, repeatedly running the wrong routes, that lands on the coaching staff. That lands on Nathaniel Hackett or Aaron Rodgers, whoever you want to say is the offensive coordinator. It lands on them.
Matthew Derrick, Aaron sucks. Get rid of him. Okay, we're getting rid of you. I just need to dig. Everybody, you know what to do to that guy. Rich Galasso, too many penalties, Salah legacy. As we've said before, not to keep beating this, a lot of times penalties aren't coaching, but these penalties were coaching.
Yeah, a lot of the pre-snap stuff is offensive coaching. And that's not Salah. That's Nathaniel Hackett.
That's mostly Hackett. And, of course, the Lazard, that was not anybody. That's just stupid.
It's just the NFL being stupid. They've been calling that all year, too. It's so dumb.
Speaking of dumb, Spencer Green, wonder how Jets fans feel being after being 0-1 to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was eating hot dogs on the sideline. He ain't do nothing. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm looking at his profile photo, that's definitely some brick stairs in Provo, Utah. That's where he is. This man is in Provo, Utah.
Provo, Utah? Okay.
That's a dock shoe, but this man is definitely in Provo, Utah.
Kumasovi team, he means is not ready. I mean, certainly, yeah. On the 1 yard line and can't score. That was
painful. And giving it to Brees up the middle when you drafted Braylon Allen to do that. You literally drafted Braylon Allen to be your short yardage back, and you're just giving it to Brees up the middle. It doesn't make any sense.
Delonte again. We need Devontae Adams. Wilson is a wide receiver too. I'm gonna put a hold on that because as we've said before with Wilson, like he was bad today, but
he was against Penn State. Like
he played. I want to say maybe 4 of the 10 best cornerbacks in the league all in a row.
You could say that Garrett Wilson's been simultaneously underwhelming through 4 weeks, and that he's still a fantastic football player because he is. We're not going to just forget what he did the last couple of years. He's a great player. But he has been underwhelming, and you could absolutely hold him accountable for that, for sure.
Defense is overrated. 10 points. 10 points, man? Come on.
The deep. I don't know what the national consensus is about the Jets' defensive line right now. I think they're a very talented defense with major flaws because of that defensive line.
Well, I think because they played New England and the pressure stats are all out of whack. People that aren't like watching all the time don't think it's as big a problem.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's going to be a conversation moving forward. It's going to be, look, the D-line's not that bad because look, here are the numbers like with the pressures and sacks. And I'm like, that is skewed from one game they played against a terrible offensive line. 3 of the 4 games this year, the Jets defensive line has been either bad or below average. That's like, and that's going to be, it's a major problem moving forward.
East Alvarado is really active. Aaron got his OC. They're not going to fire him. And, everybody's acting like this isn't Aaron's coach that he prefers. Well, Ian O'Connor did say when he's promoting his fantastic book, Out of the Darkness, which I have and you should also buy that I don't have next to me right now, so I can't plug. He said the honeymoon's kind of over with Rodgers and Salah. Now, he does have his guy Hackett, but the entire like Aaron Rodgers, even if they fire Hackett, they're not going to hire a guy who's going to tell Aaron Rodgers what to do. They're just not. So even if they fire Hackett, they're probably going to hire another Hackett.
They're not going to.
A guy who Rodgers, like if they hire Tom Clements, honestly, that's another guy that Rodgers knows and will probably let Rodgers do whatever he wants. They're not going to make him learn a whole new offensive play. He doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. They're not firing.
They're just going to hire Hackett 2.0 if they get rid of him.
Yeah, they're not going to fire Hackett midseason. They're just not doing it. Like this coaching staff is essentially tied to Aaron Rodgers. If the Jets miss the playoffs this year and they fire Salah and Hackett, I don't know where they go with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know because I also in that case you're probably getting rid of Joe Douglas as well because you just wouldn't fire him. You just wouldn't extend him because he hasn't been extended yet. So in that scenario, then you just probably move on from everybody. So I don't really know if there's a scenario where Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of this Jets team coached by someone else.
Joshua Kerr, the run defense is awful. Screw trading for Adams. We need a run stuffer and pass rusher at the deadline. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't get where all this. I know Adams is like a big flashy name and Aaron Rodgers, but practically, like honestly, I know Wilson has been disappointed, but as you mentioned before, 4 top 10 cornerbacks, boom, 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 all in a row. Mm-hmm. Lazard was okay again today. I thought he was mostly okay.
Lazard has been what you wanted Lazard to be in year 1.
And Mike Williams, I thought, was probably the best offensive player today. I thought he was actually very good.
Tyler Conklin's good too.
Conklin, like they had, like guys are there. It's just something's off, and I don't know what it is, but something's off.
Well, the offensive line was that killed.
It was on the first 3 weeks.
It was. No, the offensive line was not there today. Well, I mean, last week the offensive line played well, and the entire offense played well as a result.
George Mulatto, you thought Jets roster is the best. They are not. First off, wrong there, dummy. And second off, when did we ever say that? I don't think we ever said that they're the best roster in the league.
Like
Victor Kreitner, how do you like your frauds now, Jets fan?
Oh, who are you people? Who are you people? Get out of here.
Who are you people?
Who are you people? I don't even know what is it a Broncos fan? Bro, yo, credits to the Broncos.
You know what? It's these AFC West teams because when they lost last year to the Raiders on Sunday night, we got
look,
had to be 100 Raiders fans.
I think I'll win over Broncos fans when I say Raiders fans are the worst fan base in the NFL. This is the worst fan base I've ever interacted with.
Well, I don't know. Broncos giving us a run for their money. Watch that 40-year-old Rodgers is a beautiful thing. That's enough lip out of you, Victor Kreitner.
That's crazy, bro.
Watch the press conference from Rodgers when you get a chance. My God, he looks done. I mean, he's sad because he lost. Like, that's overreacting.
Everyone loves the big picture takeaways from games like this. Now, all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers looks like he's 70 years old after he just had a legitimately MVP caliber performance last week. Like, the reality is likely somewhere in the middle. He's not going to do what he did against the Patriots every week, and he's probably not going to do this every single week. But you also just got to keep him upright. Like, he's a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles. You cannot have him getting hit as much as he did this week.
And if Zuerlein does his job, honestly, they win anyway.
If Zuerlein makes that kick, the narrative's completely different. The Jets are 3-1. We're talking about, oh man, this Jets team got really lucky. They got some flaws, but hey, they won ugly. That would be the narrative. It's very easy that the narrative can switch like that in the NFL.
George, again, he is not quitting. All caps with this one. Turn caps lock off, George. You never gave Denver the respect. Now you lost. All right, okay. Justin, read that statement. Exactly what Jets fans always do. Think they have the best lineup. Are you saying Jets fans are optimistic?
Yeah, I don't know about that, man.
That is, talk about not reading the room, man. That is. Victor Kreitner with a piece. I give Victor Kreitner a peace offering before we get to that, though.
Sure.
Hackett's heyday was in Green Bay. Even Buffalo fired him for his dumbness. That we can agree on.
Yes, absolutely.
You've redeemed yourself, Victor Kreitner.
This is a good point here by Sean. Denver's not a terrible team. Jets should have absolutely won this game. Let's not pretend Denver's terrible. Their defense isn't terrible. Their
defense is very good, yes. Their secondary is very good.
Their offense is abysmal. And look, this is a classic trap game in the rain. I'm not shocked that the Jets lost this. It really hurt me to even pick them to win when we were talking about this on the pregame show on Wednesday. But it's a game the Jets should have won. Like they absolutely needed. I don't want to say needed because calling a must-win game in Week 4, even must-win is pretty crazy. But it's a game they absolutely should have won.
Josh Kerr again. I'm very confident in the receiving core. So am I. Like,
yeah, good.
Yeah, receiving core is fine. Breece Hall needs to get his
they
on order, but yeah.
On paper, they have 3 good wide receivers. They have a good tight end, and they have 2 good running backs. On paper, that should be more than enough. That's more than most teams have.
That is more than most. It's certainly more than freaking Denver had.
That's for damn sure.
Brian Sternbeck, Hackett did everything in his power today to affirm the Broncos' decision to pull the plug.
I said something like that on Twitter. I'm like, he did not do anything to prove Sean Payton wrong today.
Hold on. George Mulatto is back. What Jets fans need is a new fan base without the loser mentality. Didn't you just say that we think we have the best team every year? So which is it? Do we have the best team or are we losers and think we suck all the time? Which is it?
I can't tell if George is 13 years old or 65. I'm not sure. It's one of the
It's either an old man or his grandson is tweeting from the account. If it's you, put the computer down or have the nurse not type that in anymore.
Let's do this, Mike. Enough negative. This is from Jacob on YouTube. I appreciate positivity. I like to consider myself a positive person. So enough. He says enough negativity. You were. I saw you were chatting me during the game, man. I know you're not positive. Enough negativity and positive takeaway. Any positive takeaways or things to look forward to. London will be fun, I guess, right? Against a really good Vikings.
Well, we're not going to go, but yeah.
No, legitimately, the receiving core is better than I expected it was going to be. Mike Williams has already looks like Mike Williams. I would love to get involved even more. Alan Lazard's been better than expected. Braylon Allen has been a revelation and a lot better than Jets fans expected him to be. And the corners and linebackers are still good. Quincy Williams, shout out Quincy Williams. He had an awesome game. I hope Tyler they kept saying Bidet on the broadcast. I swear to God it was Beatty when he was in Baltimore.
I think it was too. Yeah.
Unless he changed the pronunciation.
But by the way, hope everything's good with him, man. That was scary.
I hope that was a scary situation. They kept saying Bidet on the broadcast, and I swear he was Tyler Beatty in Baltimore. But I hope everything's all right with him. But Quincy Williams, dude, what an awesome game for him. He was great. So we're talking positive takeaways.
Secondary as good as advertised. Chuck Clark was great today, I thought.
And shout out DJ Reed. DJ Reed DJ Reed was the best player on the field, I think, for either team in this game. He was outstanding all game. It's unfortunate that his performance is not rewarded with a win, but I thought he played great. And there's a select few Jets fans that want DJ Reed to be washed because they know the Jets are probably moving on from him. They want CJ Mosley to be washed. I know Mosley didn't play today, but they want him to be washed because they know that he's probably not part of the future. They're not washed yet, neither of them. Like, they're both still very good players. And DJ Reed is going to get a big contract in the offseason, and he deserves it. It's not going to be from the Jets most likely, but he was outstanding. So if you're looking for positive takeaways, secondary is good. Linebackers are great. receiving core is better than expected, and you got Braylon Allen, who has been a lot better than expected too.
Is he the steal of the draft, like Delonte said? I mean, too early for that, but he's certainly one of the better ones. Yes,
he's up there. He's definitely the best. Like when every draft seems to have like one good mid-round running back, he's the best mid-round running back that's emerged so far.
Him and Bucky Irving down in Tampa Bay.
He was third-round pick. Irving.
Bucky was like a couple picks before Braylon.
Oh, really? Okay.
There was a pick. It was like a pick of like 12 picks. There were like 6 backs went. Well, and Allen was at the end. Jets got lucky there.
Rashad White is not very good, so.
Yes, he is not. Oreo. The Jets brought in Rodgers to win games like this, yet we come up short. Teams know how to beat this defense, run the ball through the C gap. I think they lose the next 2, before getting it together. Well, they have 2 undefeated teams coming up down the pike, but they beat the Eagles last year with Zach Wilson, so who knows?
I think that's a very fair and measured take there.
That is a fair and measured take.
They did. They brought in Rodgers to win games like this, and they didn't. And again, I don't think Rodgers is the reason they lost this game, and I'm not going to place all the blame on him by any means, but you brought in Aaron Rodgers to win close games like this. And again, it's not all his fault. It's not all his fault. The offensive line was bad. His playmaker, specifically Breece Hall, let him down, and his run defense was bad too, but he was not good. I mean, the Jets there's no reason they should have lost this game. Like in terms of total yards, they had, what was the total yardage? It was 248 to 186. I mean, that's not a significant amount more, but it is more. Like they had more time of possession. They should have won this game, but they also had more than almost 3 times the amount of penalties too, which that'll do it.
We're also back to the old questions about Saleh, which is, like obviously I think Saleh has not done a particularly good job this year, which kind of hurts for guys who I think have been more pro Saleh than a lot of Jets fans or people who speak about the Jets. But we are back in that old thing of like, well, he's a defensive guy. The defense is great. They could have 13 points in 2 weeks. I don't care who you're playing. 13 points in 2 weeks is good.
I'm going to be that guy, though, the guy who I wasn't all of last year and said that the defense is worse than the stats would indicate. I thought last year
they're still good, though.
A lot of people said that about the Jets defense last year, that the Jets defense was I mean, they statistically were great, but then, people were like, oh, they're actually overrated because they can't stop the run. Their run defense was not particularly bad last year. They were like 11th or 10th in yards per attempt against. This year, it is very bad. And this year, it is very concerning. Even though they only allowed 10 yards or 10 points today, that was largely because of the weather and because they were playing Bo Nix and the Broncos offense. This run defense is really bad, and the pass rush is very concerning too.
I just can't. -7 passing yards in the first half.
And you lose.
God, he was so bad.
Yep.
Like, and I know that he's won his last 2 games, but it was not in, like, some rookie quarterbacks don't have great numbers, but you watch the games, you're like, when they figure it out, it's going to be good. Like, I'm struggling to see that right now with Bo Nix. My personal enemy, George, is back. I remember you Jets fans wanted to dump Darnold in favor of Zach. That didn't age well. Did you miss all the Carolina years where he was also terrible? Because that happened, and then he got on a crazy 4-game heater that's better than anything he's ever done his entire football career. There's that. But as Oreo says again, he has a hot take here, though, because I don't want to give George much more of a
you don't need to.
The only positive thing is Braylon Allen. Hot take. I've seen enough, honestly. Braylon needs to start Breece the second. I wouldn't go that far, but I definitely think there needs to be, I wouldn't say an even splitting of carries, but you can't go into games with Braylon Allen not getting any touches until the second quarter. Like if I were to create like a master game plan for next week, I'm going to say Breece runs the ball maybe 12 times. Get a couple catches here, 4 if I can still use, maybe 12 for Breece, 7 or 8 for Braylon. I mean, Breece is a better player right now. I think he's a more complete player, and I still think overall he's a much better player than Allen. But purely running the football this year, I think Braylon Allen's been better. And even with all these other guys around him, like you can't ignore that if you're Hackett. You got to go with what's working.
I think it's a feel thing. I think it's a hot hand. Today clearly should have been a Braylon Allen day, and eventually they figured that out, but they figured it out too late. Breece was really struggling to gain any traction in that first half. I mean, he finished with 10 carries for 4 yards, like 10 carries for 4 yards for Breece Hall in this game, on top of 2 false start penalties, a drop, and a couple other mishaps. It was really bad, and it clearly was not his game. This is a game where you needed to lean on Braylon Allen, and they should have done it a lot earlier, and that's where I would give probably the most fault to Nathaniel Hackett for not realizing that sooner. especially when you get in that goal to go situation. I mean, dude, they had first and goal or whatever it was. They were at the 1 yard line and they didn't score a touchdown. Like and you look back and you look at reasons why the Jets lost this game. There it is. Like that one sequence right there where they're giving it to Breece Hall twice on first and second down and goal. It's so dumb. It's very dumb. You drafted Braylon Allen to be that guy. So I don't know if it's a situation of like who should be the starter, the backup. They're both very good players. I still think Breece Hall is one of the best running backs in the NFL until he proves me otherwise. If he continues to struggle, then maybe I'll change my mind. But it's a hot hand thing. It's a ride to hot hand. It's a feel out the game. If it's a sloppy slugfest like this one, maybe you lean on Braylon Allen more. If you're getting a lot of plays in open space, maybe you lean on Breece Hall more. I think it's a matchup based thing. It depends on the week.
Delonte, I can't wait for Stephen A to call for the coaches to be fired. He has not watched a Jets game this year, so he just
does not know who Robert Saleh is.
He does not know who Robert Saleh is. Outside of Aaron Rodgers, and I'll even give him Garrett Wilson. How many players does he know on the Jets?
He probably knows Sauce. Probably knows Breece.
Probably knows Sauce. I don't think he knows Breece.
He might. I think he knows Breece because running back fantasy,
Maybe that, but the fact we have to debate that is questionable.
We're gonna hear Mike Greenberg tomorrow saying that probably. We're gonna hear the regular talking heads. And look, I'm not saying it's like you're an idiot for saying that maybe fired his coaching staff because what have they proven? They're just not going to yet. Like they're not obviously not going to fire the coaching staff 4 games into the season with a 2-2 record. They're not going to do that, especially after a blowout win on primetime TV the week before. But yeah, it's fair to criticize the coaching staff.
I'm just afraid that they would hire some 37-year-old offensive coordinator under McVay with no hair on his nuts, and then he gets in there and he doesn't know how to coach defense, and then that falls apart. That's my concern because
they're not.
Saleh, I don't think in game is a great coach. I think that's his biggest issue. Like he doesn't really sense things, like who has a hot hand, when to change things up. But goddamn, this guy can coach defense. And I don't want to completely get rid of that yet because this defense, that's the reason that the Jets, I think, were Super Bowl contenders coming into the year. People thought not because of Rodgers coming off the Achilles. It was Rodgers coming off the Achilles plus the addition of this great or the complementing it with this great defense. So you could throw away half of your formula for success here if you do that. But he also can't coach in game. I'm really struggling with this.
And also the whole thing of I will continue to go back to the defensive line because I'm like, man, we talked him up all offseason about how I said it. I was like, even though I think the D-line's got a lot worse, I still think it's going to be good because Robert Saleh. It's not.
Well, last week it looked great. This week, nothing.
Last week it looked great against me playing left guard. Like they've signed Michael Jordan like 6 days earlier and he started at left guard. It was an abysmal offensive line by the Patriots, and it was on a short week for them too. They were so beat up. If we saw at least one other game of them at least being like decent, then I would maybe have a different opinion on this. But I don't trust them against Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, and the Vikings next week. I don't think they're going to get pressure. I don't think they're going to be able to stop the run.
Cortland Sutton was the leading receiver for Denver. He had 60 yards, and Bo Nix had 60 passing yards.
It's insane. Second
was Michael Burton, the fullback, with 3.
I'm more down on the run defense than the pass rush because at least, and again, Will McDonald's good. Like he's a fine player. He can't be your best edge rusher, and he's also a complete negative in run defense. He had, I think, a 29 run defense grade for PFF going into this week, and it did not look pretty tonight either. He's a really, really big problem in run defense, and he misses a lot of tackles too. He's a good pass rusher. Shouldn't be your best pass rusher right now, but he's
last year though, wasn't Huff the best pass rusher, and then he also was not a great run defender.
He was better than this in run defense. Not good, but better. And then also you're combining that with the fact that you don't have John Franklin-Myers. Now you don't have Jermaine Johnson, who are two very good run defenders.
Yeah. So and Johnson's nobody's fault. That's a freak. But
no, man, Johnson's just unfortunate. I mean,
that hurts though. They were feeling it.
Yeah, it sucks that their defensive line got a lot worse, and then Hassan Reddick's not there, and then you lose your best defensive lineman, or your best edge rusher. Like that. That's a big problem.
I'm sorry, Justin. I got to do it again.
Don't leave me to George. Let him go. Let him.
I can't. He's got me. He's pushing my buttons. I can't. Fan base wants to make too many changes after every game. I thought you want them to make changes.
Every fan base does that. I don't think this guy's a Jets fan. Every fan base does that.
I know he's not. Clearly, he
said move the Jets to Alaska though. That'd be kind of sick.
He said Idaho earlier. He's getting further away from New York. You're going to end up in. You're going to end up in China by his next comment.
The Juneau Jets? That actually has a nice ring to it. The Juneau Jets.
I actually went to Juneau this little peel back the curtain. I went to Juneau this summer in Alaska. I will say, literally, there was a downtown with like 4 or 5 Main Street, Church Street, and a couple other things, and then just the wilderness around it. It says there's 30,000 people there. It looked like there were 5,000 people there. I don't know. I think they're lying about those numbers. That would be hilarious to see.
Juno is also a good movie and a Sabrina Carpenter song. I bet you didn't know that, Mike.
I don't even know any Sabrina Carpenter songs.
That can't be true. There's no way.
I don't know. I know that she's popular, and I saw her on that Hot One show. I don't know any of her songs.
You have heard.
Is Espresso her song?
Yes, thank you.
Then that's.
I know you know at least one. Everybody knows at least one Sabrina Carpenter song.
Okay, that's my one.
That's the one. That's the one I expected you to know.
Justin, you gotta believe me here.
No, I believe you. I believe that you don't know a lot of Sabrina Carpenter songs. All right, so we're getting off the rails here.
Let's look forward, because this game is officially dead and buried. Let's take a quick little look at our London calling.
Do we have
over in across the pond against, of all teams, an undefeated Sam Darnold? And you thought this offensive line had problems with this game,
dude.
Now you have Brian Flores,
Jonathan Grenard. Like, oh my goodness, he's been
Jonathan Grenard. Even forget that. Even if you take Grenard out of it, it's the fact that every play is either they're blitzing 8 or it's like they're dropping 8 into coverage and blitzing 3, and they look the same and disguise it so well.
Rodgers is going to take a beating, dude. I don't know if he's going to get out of that game healthy. I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, that's why we had to win this game, because I didn't even think, even if the Vikings lost today, and even if the Jets won today, I still would take Minnesota in that game.
Vikings are going to do illegal things to us, Josh Kerr says, probably. And then the Jets.
And honestly, I think it's going to be fun to see Sauce against Justin Jefferson. I don't think Darnold's going to throw for 3 touchdowns like he has been in his last few games.
I don't know, man. I don't know, dude. That's just that. Well, how storybook would that be if Darnold torches Sauce Gardner in the Jets defense? Well,
the thing is, though, like even if they win, he could have a Bo Nix game. Even if they win, that's going to be the story.
You're right.
Even if he was bad, if you want to, I mentioned this earlier in the stream. Like, if you want to be super positive Jets fan, I don't know if you're out there. Please tell us, because I'd like to meet the positive Jets fan.
I try to be a positive Jets fan.
And fail sometimes because they lose the Bo Nix.
I say that, but then I also never want to pick them in the previews.
You never pick them, and then you say the defensive line's terrible. You always go after them.
Because it is terrible.
And even when McDonald's good, you're like, but actually his pressures were kind of.
That's just reality. I'm not hating. That's just me being real. That's just the dose of reality.
That's what a negative person would say. I'm just calling it like it is.
Maybe, but it's the truth. Hey, I said it about Dalvin Cook last year too. Before he even stepped on the field, I was like, those numbers he put up last year, empty numbers. Man was bad. And guess what? He was bad.
Called it. That was we each had one big call last year. You had Dalvin Cook pegged, and I had Carl Lawson pegged early.
I still think Carl Lawson would be good. He just fucking messed up his back.
Got hurt.
He got hurt again. It sucks, dude.
Joshua Kerr has a comment, though. The AFC is wide open other than the Bills.
It is. It's true.
It is. I don't think the Bills will be this good for the rest of the year. I think they'll be good and probably win the division, but I don't think they're going to be.
Josh Allen is doing a lot. And that Sean McDermott, dude, what a job he's doing with that.
What a job. Houston looks good. I think Houston will be. They'll be up there.
The Chiefs are gonna be there.
Chiefs are gonna be there. Even they look horrible now.
That division is ass. They're gonna win the division.
They look horrible, and yet Mahomes is gonna Brady devil magic his way to 12 wins every single year like he does. But outside of that, you're right, it is open. But also a lot of those teams that could compete in the AFC, Denver, excuse me, not them, Buffalo, Houston. Honestly, I think even Baltimore, if they kind of get the ship righted a little bit, if they win this game,
they're still a really good team.
They would beat Denver at home if Denver scored 10 points. They just would.
Probably.
They just would. Pittsburgh already has. They just would. You had to win this game. That's why I can't be too positive.
They're both better coach teams.
They are both better coach teams. Rob Serafinowicz thinking he's doing stand up over here. How's this for the positive? The Jets will have a great pick come draft time. Boom.
Is it mock draft time? Is it mock draft time already, Mike?
It'll be mock draft time when you lose on Monday night to the Bills. Then it'll be
when they lose. Then they go to 2-4. Is that already
at home too?
Well, if we're doing mock draft time, then I'm starting to pencil in Jalen Milroe or whoever. At that point,
what would be really same old Jets if Rodgers plays in the Bills game, and he's hurt because Minnesota beat him up, because I think they're going to get a lot of pressure. Even if the line's better, Like this may not, people are going to say the offensive line's bad the next game. They could play better and still give up pressure just because Minnesota is such a good defense and such an aggressive defense. They're just going to get home. It happens every game, no matter who they play. If he gets beat up in that game and then gets like hurt in the Bills game at home again on Monday night, tell me that the league isn't scripted if that happened.
And what if it's well, I guess it wouldn't be Leonard Floyd because he's not there anymore, but
it wouldn't be Leonard. It'd probably be Gregory Rousseau or something.
It'd be like Von Miller, because Von Miller's going off now. He's having a good year. He's back apparently.
Like if the Jets want to pull us, it's not Zach Wilson against the Eagles level because nobody thought they had a shot there and then they just miracled their way to a win. But if they want to win this game, much easier said than done. You got to stop throwing. You got to. I know you can't make an addition now, but like you got to find a way. And they did it against New England, but that was, I think, because New England had a horrible game plan, didn't run the ball early at all. Ramondre Stevenson had like 6 carries, and then they got down early and had to throw. So I'm not even – I mean, they played okay in that game, but I'm not really going to put that in the column of like good run defense performance. You got to find a way to do that. You can't let specifically Jefferson take it, which again, they have Sauce. That's a huge, and Sauce was himself again today. I don't think anybody caught a pass on Sauce, maybe one.
No, I mean, the Broncos weren't throwing.
They weren't even trying to throw on. At least the Jets tried to throw on Surtain a little bit. The Broncos didn't even try. You got to do that. And then you got to hope that like the Vikings secondary looks pretty good, but because their front seven gets so much pressure immediately, it's really hard to gauge how good the secondary is because nobody ever holds the ball long enough to really test it. So if they somehow let Rodgers test that secondary, maybe, just maybe, they pull off an upset. But if they play even half as bad as this, it's a blowout. If they play this bad, it's going to be a non-competitive blowout where Tyrod Taylor plays.
There are 2 things that derail an offense in the NFL and make it legitimately unwatchable or unplayable. It's either unplayable quarterback play, which is we saw that with Carolina with Bryce Young and at times with the Jets with Zach Wilson last year. That if that's happening, you can't move the ball. You can't do anything on offense. It doesn't matter. Like the guys can be open. It doesn't matter. The O-line can be blocking. It does not matter. The other thing is offensive line play. If the offensive line is unplayable, then you are not going to be able to do anything on offense. And when I look at that Patriots game that the Jets played, that was the offensive line. It was completely unplayable. And with an offensive line as bad as that was, it's hard to even take anything into account. Like the Jets run defense, it didn't matter. Like the offensive line for the Patriots was so bad that no matter what the Jets do, they were going to be able to get stops. And so it's hard for me to even take much away from the run defense in that game. I know they played well, but buddy, it's a big problem. And it's a big problem going into this Minnesota game. And as Brian said, Vikings entered the week leading the NFL in sacks, also tied for the second most interceptions. I'm not as concerned about the second part because even though Rodgers, he looks like a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers at times. He's still pretty safe with the ball, and they're not turning the ball over outside of wacky Looney Tunes style fumbles like Garrett Wilson had today. But the sacks thing is a major issue. And if the Jets got whooped on in the trenches by the Broncos offensive and defensive lines, they are in for a rude awakening against a Vikings offensive defensive line. That's part of the reason that they were able to be as good as they have been through the first 3 weeks and now 4 weeks of the season is because their offensive line is playing at an elite level. Their defensive line is playing at an elite level. It's gonna be really, really tough. And it's a really brutal matchup for them. London games are weird. Crazy shit happens when you go overseas. Anything can happen. It's football. But it's hard for me to sit here and say that the Jets have a schematic advantage going into that Minnesota game.
The other hope, too, is even though Darnold has been an amazing quarterback so far, he's still thrown a few really bad interceptions. He actually had 2 turnovers today. He threw a pick and he fumbled. And they kind of let Green Bay back in that game. They were up 28-0, and they only won by 2 points.
He still makes mistakes.
Minnesota, I thought was going to be bad this year because I thought they had everything else, but they needed the quarterback. Darnold's been that.
Yep.
I guess the hope is at some point he's going to turn back into a pumpkin because we've seen Darnold play really good for 3-4 games in a row. Every team has.
He did it in
Carolina. Everybody has.
Yep.
The hope is he's going to regress. And to their credit, the Jets have not allowed a 100-yard passer or a team score more than 10 points in 2 straight weeks.
It's true.
Now, that can be kind of fun with numbers and playing with stuff because I don't think their defense played like a team that gave up 10 points today. I thought they were a little bit worse and got lucky because Bo Nix is absolutely atrocious.
Yeah.
But It's still a good defense. It's still a well above. I think it's still top 10. I think that's fair. Even with the run defense, I think it's still top 10.
Possibly. I need a couple more weeks of this D-line. If they're playing at the level they've been playing at, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the only reason I think that is because I still think you can make a case this is the best secondary.
Yes, and I think you can make a case it's the best linebacker duo. But unfortunately, if your defensive line is getting run through every single week, it's tough.
Well, because if you have outside, I think Cleveland is close. A top 2 secondary.
Yes.
A top 2 linebacker room.
Yep.
When Mosley's healthy.
Throw Sherwood in there as well, absolutely.
Sherwood was pretty good, but I think Mosley's still better, obviously.
He is. I'm just saying if you instead of linebacker duo, if you want to throw Sherwood as the third guy.
That's the hope. The hope is those 2 units are going to just overwhelm Sam Darnold and he's going to go regress. Because there's no way he's going to throw 3 touchdowns and 300 yards in every single game. That's the hope. But if that doesn't happen, and Kevin O'Connell, good offensive coach, who, again, comes from that Mick Shanahan tree, even though he's more the McVay side, who's pretty much practiced exclusively against defenses like Robert Saleh that are meant to counter those offenses. Could be, if he has a good game and Hackett lays another egg like this, you could be in for a really, really tough one.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the best coach team in the NFL through 4 weeks versus a team that I would say 3 of the weeks has been pretty poorly coached on both ends of the field, specifically the offensive side. But the coaching staff leaves a lot to be desired. And then you also have a defensive line in the Vikings that is one of the best in the NFL so far. Their pass rush has been excellent, and their offensive line has been very good as well against the Jets team that just got obliterated on both sides of the ball with the offensive line and defensive line today. So it's a tough matchup. I don't have a lot of optimism going into the game. But yeah, as Brian said, we should have been looking toward bye week improvements right about now. That's kind of true. That's kind of true.
When is their bye week?
It's later in the year. It's right around the deadline, I believe. Right around the trade deadline. It's week 10ish, probably. Week 11. It's week 11. It's week 11 or week 12.
Oh yeah, it's after. Yeah, they got Minnesota, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. Oh my God, and 2 of them are on the road.
3 of the best coach teams. I think we said this last week. There's 3 of the best coach teams in the NFL right there.
And then New England, and then on a short week, Houston. Even it's at home, but still Houston.
Another
Arizona, the Colts bye week.
This was a game they needed to win. But look, if they're as good as we thought they were, which they're probably not, but if we're as good, it's week 7 is the bye. I'm sorry. But yeah, if they're as good as they thought we were, then they should be able to beat a team like the Steelers. They should be able to. They should be able to beat a team like, the Vikings have looked amazing, but I don't know if I'm ready to crown them as a top 3 team in the NFL, even though they've looked like it through 4 weeks. They should be able to beat a team like that. Hell, they should be able to beat the Bills because they beat them last year with Zach Wilson. So
but they should have been able to beat the by a lot.
Absolutely. But
9 points with Aaron Rodgers.
Weird games happen. Trap games happen. If they come out and they beat Minnesota in London, the narrative's going to change again, Mike. It'll be completely different.
Here's my defense also. I give every team, no matter how good you are, how bad you are, exactly one holy shit F-up game a year.
Yeah.
Where nothing goes right. Now, sometimes that manifests in the form of a blowout. Sometimes it's a close game. But you get one mulligan a year where, because no matter how good you are, sometimes some weeks you just lay an egg. Even the best teams every year lose 3-4 games. Even the worst win 3-4 games. If you want to be positive, as we close out this stream here, you better hope this is that one. Otherwise, things can get really tough over these next few weeks. So thank you for tuning in to the Chef Press podcast, because we wanted to come on here and talk about a great, 3-1 hard-fought victory. And here we are 2-2. Now, a lot of teams are 2-2, but the Jets don't have a ton of momentum at 2-2. So if you want to go hear us talk about the Jets, you can find us back on Wednesday again, because we'll be back on Wednesday this week after a little Thursday matinee. Maybe that's why they lost. Our schedule was all off. That could be it. So we'll be back on Wednesday, and we'll be back on Sunday afternoon after the Jets play the Vikings, so you can catch us there. So thank you guys for tuning in. You know where to find us: Apple, Google, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. Justin, Jet Press, head honcho, feel free to sign us off.
You got Katie said, "Don't go. I don't want to mourn alone." We will be mourning again on Wednesday, so tune in then.
Play back the podcast and pretend that you're listening live.
Yeah, man, this sucked. But like you said, you got to hope that this is just your Jets mulligan. This is your mulligan. They get one. Everyone gets one. This is their one. If there's another,
it's like that bit on Family Guy where like
everybody gets one.
Falling and Spider-Man comes out, everybody gets one, and then he
gets one. This is Spider-Man saving Robert Solid is saying everybody gets one.
Let's hack it this week. Everybody gets one.
Until Wednesday. Thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter, Justin T. Freed. Follow the Jet Press on the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time and live immediately following every single Jets game, win or loss. Thank you all for listening to the Jet Press podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That has been Mike Luciano. We'll see you guys next time.
We'll be back on Wednesday and Sunday, and hopefully things will be better because, God damn it, we need it.